Pentecostal people and how weird they are. And they are weird.
You're
in
not
a good
wrong.
way. No, in a good way. Honestly, I'm one of the weirdest weirdos now. But I mean in the sense of glorifying God and being free in my expression of worship.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Jen.
And you're listening to the Matt and Jen Show. Join us each week as we discuss all things worship,
leadership,
and life. Combined, we have over 20 years of worship leading experience.
We're songwriters and recording artists, parents to 6 amazing humans.
And 1 sock-eating dog.
We love Jesus and we love people.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Hey everyone, welcome to our very first episode of the Matt and Jen Show. This is episode number 1. We're looking forward to getting to know you and growing together with you. In this episode, Jen and I are going to take some time to tell a little bit about our background, our views about worship, and generally just what makes us us. Over time, I know you'll get to know us better, but these are the basics. So sit back and relax, unless you're driving or working out or operating heavy machinery. You know what? Just enjoy the episode. This is going to be fun, I think.
Well, I hope it's going to be fun. I'm fun.
You are fun.
I am fun.
Yeah.
And you're fun too.
I'm fun too.
Yeah.
I'm pretty witty sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that about myself, but
you just did.
I just did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Okay.
Since it's the first show and nobody knows who you are.
Okay. Well, I'm 6'1".
True.
Yeah.
Maybe a little taller.
Maybe a little taller, like 7'1".
Well,
but maybe somewhere in between there.
Right.
It's between 6'1" and 7'1".
Okay. There's the wittiness.
Yeah, and
Check.
I have flaming hair.
Wow.
No, I don't. It's brown. Yeah, but maybe I'll just talk a little bit about
your history, your
history,
testimony.
my story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in a little town called Pembroke, Ontario.
Woo!
Yeah, rural Pembroke. Pembroke has a claim to fame by being right next door to Petawawa, which is what most people, they've heard of Petawawa because there's an army base there. When you say Pembroke, they're like, oh, that's interesting. And they shake their head and nod and look at you and you realize you don't know where Pembroke is.
I did that.
Yeah, you did do that. Lots of people do that.
Yeah.
I get it.
Where?
It's a yeah. So I grew up in Pembroke. It's a rural community. I guess Pembroke's claim to fame is that it was the first. I'm gonna have to fact check this later, but it's the first city in Canada with hydroelectric powered street lighting.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, if I could fit that on a t-shirt, I probably would.
You'd fit anything on a t-shirt.
Yeah, I really would. So I grew up in Pembroke, which is about an hour and a half northwest of Ottawa. So it's close to capital of Canada, which is kind of cool. And I grew up in church. So almost literally, as my understanding goes, I was born, actually my mom went into labor while she was at a church service. So I could have been, if I had been really aggressive.
Or your mom really forward thinking.
Right.
Yes.
I probably could have been born right there.
Literally in church.
Yeah. But I'm a little bit more laid back. So
True.
I waited to the hospital.
Good for you.
Yeah. So yeah, I was pretty much born in church. And growing up, my family was really committed to church. When I say church, we grew up, I have one sister, and our family were involved in the Pentecostal church. So if you're wondering, what type of church background I have, that's my church background.
What does it mean, Pentecostal? What does that mean?
It's fiery.
Like your hair.
Yeah. Well, which is brown, by the way.
It's a fiery brown.
So grew up in a Pentecostal church, which it was lively. I come from the Pentecostal movement, comes from a holiness movement, right? So we weren't allowed to go to the movie theaters. We didn't drink. We didn't dance. We weren't allowed to go to dances, things like that, which I guess for some people might make it seem a little bit restrictive and weird. But honestly, I loved growing up in Pembroke, and I loved my parents. I still love them. They're awesome.
Yes.
Hi, Mom and Dad. And my sister. I love my sister. Yeah. Like my childhood was great. I really liked it. So we were in church all the time, though. Like my dad was at choir practice on Wednesday nights. So after church on Wednesday night, you have the midweek Bible program. And you learn about Bible stories and all that kind of stuff. My dad would go to choir, and I would go to the gym in my church. My church had a gymnasium. And I would play ball hockey, and we would run around and play hide and seek in the church. And it was just like, that's my understanding of church life. It was, you go to school, you're at home, and you have church. And that was my life. Right. So when I was a teenager, I really felt that I needed to, well, let me back up a little bit. I grew up playing baseball. I love playing baseball. And I always thought that I would be a baseball player. I guess lots of kids aspire to be baseball players and hockey players and astronauts and these grandiose things. And as a kid, you're not concerned about how many kids want to be baseball players and that they take like 200 a year, out of millions. But I had an experience at camp one summer. So every summer there was a church camp. So in the same way that some people would go to a regular summer camp, we had a church camp. And so the church camp, you learned even more about the Bible and learned about God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And so I had this encounter. I don't think I was really, quote unquote, on fire for God at that point. I think, I was just being a typical teenager. And I kind of found myself living one way at school to impress my school friends, and then one way at church to impress my church friends. And I remember going to camp and had this encounter with God, and it was a supernatural encounter. It was, sometime I'll describe it a little bit more. I won't get into it too much today, but the encounter itself just reaffirmed to me. I always believed that God was real, and I knew there was something in me that knew that this wasn't just a religious thing or just a tradition that I was following, but that there was some depth to it, and that God existed and he was real. I always kind of knew that as a kid, but this kind of solidified that. And I was probably 14 or 15 years old and realized I want to go to Bible college. I want to serve God. And cool. So the latter part of my teenage years, I really started pushing into understanding what it was to have a relationship with God, and developing a depth of relationship with him. So reading books on, 16 years old and reading books on revivals from the past and what it meant to pray and what it meant to really worship God. And all this time, my parents had me and my sister signed up for piano lessons. So I took, by the time I was 6, I think, I started piano lessons, and was progressing through piano at the time. And so by the time I was 16, I had been, taking piano lessons for 10 years or so. And I started leading worship. And my youth pastor at the time, gave me the opportunity to lead worship when I was 16. It was terrible.
I'm sure it wasn't that bad.
No, it was. So I started dating a girl.
Oh, good. We're going to get into that.
Well, no, a week before.
Okay.
And then I led worship, and she came to the service because I wanted her to come to the service because it's Wednesday night. I want you to see I'm leading worship. And she dumped me after I led worship. It was that bad. She said
she dumped you because of the terrible worship that you led?
Well, I don't know. I think she was misguided, but
I'm fine with her decision.
Yeah. No, it's a good decision. It's a good decision. I don't regret anything. But no, it was just, I look at and obviously I look at the way I lead worship now and the way I led worship back then, and it's like, I think the key difference is that there was a leader. So my youth pastor believed in me.
Yeah.
And I said to him after that night, I can't do this ever again. That was terrible. And he said, no, you've got to keep going. So to the detriment of his group, right? Like, he's trying to grow a group. He's a youth pastor. He wants to see more kids coming, and people are leaving because it was that terrible. I may be remembering it a little bit more harshly, like
Probably.
critically, but the point being, he didn't give up on me. And so over the next 6 months, I thought it got worse every week. Seriously, it's pretty bad. I remember having like 2 or 3 music stands spread across because I had all this sheet music everywhere, and I'm just kind of plunking away on a keyboard. And I mean, like,
Terrified.
if I had been out there listening to me, I'm not sure I would have come back. But then it started getting better, and I think there's an importance too. It wasn't just that I was playing piano, and it wasn't just that I was singing some songs. All the while, I was really pursuing God. Like, I was really trying to pray as much as I could, and I wanted to spend time with him more than just reading a devotional book or reading some neat books. I really wanted to dig into who are you, Jesus? Like, because I really feel like there's more. And I think even today, like, even at the level that I'm at now, the place that I'm at now in my walk with God, I still feel that depth of, man, there's got to be more.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember, going through all of that and being really thankful, number one, for my parents having given me the ability to play the piano, right?
Yeah,
like that was
sure.
tough. Imagine a 9-year-old boy in the summertime. You can't go outside and play until you've practiced your scales. Okay, and I didn't appreciate it as much then. Mom and Dad, thanks so much. Now I really appreciate it. And so there are definitely the tools behind that. But at the end of my teenage years, then I went to Bible college in Peterborough, and I took a 4-year program. And I kind of, at the time, I knew I was supposed to be there, but I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. They didn't have a music program as such. They had a couple music classes, and the music director at the school was amazing. And there were opportunities. Like, I was on what's called a travel team. So in my first 3 years of college, basically almost every other weekend, we were away leading worship at some church somewhere. So it was kind of neat, all over Eastern Ontario and a couple times into Quebec. And the opportunity was amazing. And so I finished Bible college and got a position on staff at, then it was called Community Pentecostal Church in Oshawa, North Oshawa, and now it's called the Embassy. And I've just finished up 18 years there.
Yeah.
And now we're launching into some new things. So that's kind of been my journey, my God journey. Honestly, there's so many other little things that, we're sitting here talking, and I'm there's things coming to my mind, but we'll have lots of time to get into lots of those things. I have so many stories.
Yeah.
So many.
Which are good, because we'll do this again.
Yeah.
And you can use those stories.
Maybe episode 2.
Perhaps. Collect all your stories for episode 2.
Okay. Yeah. So that's basically, in a nutshell, that's my history.
Cool. All right. Do you want to know about me?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to know about you.
I have opposite childhood to you. I did not grow up in church. I grew up in Scarborough with my parents and my brother. I won't get into dynamics of extended family or possible extended family because we're still not sure of all of that.
Lots of episodes.
Lots of episodes, yeah. But I did grow up with a little bit of a God consciousness, so we didn't go to church. But my dad grew up Baptist. He went to church as a Baptist, and so sort of same thing. No cards, no dancing. It was very dry, though. It wasn't a relationship with God per se.
Yeah.
And I know my mom, I don't know if she always went to church, but they would identify as united. So it was kind of just like church activity, Sunday school, that kind of thing. But I don't remember my mom ever talking about God. But my dad would every once in a while say that he prayed to God every night before he went to bed.
Hmm.
So that was kind of my exposure from my parents. I had a couple of friends who were Christian and would invite me to like their church. But I rarely went because I was uncomfortable. Like it was boring to me, and it was just church. It wasn't a relationship with Jesus. But I do remember being a child talking to God or talking to Jesus, not really knowing why, not really questioning that he was or wasn't there. I'm talking when I was like 5 or 6 or 7. But I have a whole childhood and adolescence and into adulthood, a lot of abuse, a lot of neglect that, of course, would lead to me being exposed to abuse and from a lot of different people. So in my mid 20s, I actually started hearing an audible voice and not really understanding what was happening, but knowing somehow that it was God who was talking to me. And I don't really know how I knew that, but I just did. And that happened probably for a couple of years. I was in a really bad situation. And because of all the abuse, I had gone to a lot of counseling, a lot of different counselors at different times in my life. And the commonality in all of them was giving me coping skills to help, when I would have a flashback or when I would have, I don't know if I want to call it panic attacks, but could be. Yeah. And to a degree, those things helped, and I think that does help, and I think counseling does help. I love counseling, and I love the counselors who helped me to the best of their ability. But what really helped me was really knowing that God was talking to me and coming to the understanding that he wanted a relationship with me, and he wanted me to talk to him too. That it wasn't that he was difficult to find, it's just that I needed to know that there was actually a relationship to be had. And one of the things psychologically that happens to a person who's been abused is they don't think they're very worthy, and they're not worth anything. Why would God want to talk to me? Because I was damaged. Right. I was damaged goods, basically. But in my exposure to him and to knowing that there was a relationship to be had and that he wanted that relationship, he actually chased me. He was the one, that even though I thought, I'm not worthy of you to speak to me, God, the first things that he said to me, and the most things that he still says to me, he speaks to my identity in him and how he sees me. And it's never the way I assumed he would see me, because of that quote unquote religious background of, God requires you to be good, to be perfect, to be, to not do anything wrong. And if you do something wrong, forget about it. Forget you. Yeah. He would say the absolute opposite. I decided that you would be here. I breathed into your lungs. I want you here. You're here for such a time as this. I'm going to cry. Yeah. And beyond the counseling, the psychological counseling, I chose to go the prayer counseling route. And in prayer counseling, I had an amazing lady who has actually passed on now, Cindy Peck, who taught me how to connect with God and the things that he had to say to me. And he speaks to me a lot in pictures. And the pictures that I saw were so healing to me that they healed my spirit and my soul beyond the coping mechanisms that I was given from psychologists. Again, I love psychology. I love counseling. I love the tools that I was given. But man, what a difference when you're dealing with something like flashbacks, to be able to not just, capture that moment and breathe through it and recognize the things that are physically around you in the moment, which are good coping skills. But for Jesus literally to infiltrate those memories and to show me where he was, and to show me how he felt, how he grieved, how he cried for me, and how he protected me in those moments, completely changed, and I believe rewired my thinking in my brain to see those memories completely different in the context of him being there and him caring that it happened, and what he said of me in those moments, because those moments can change you. Those moments can change how you think of yourself and how you think of the world. And so to recognize that I had belief systems based on that abuse that told me that I wasn't worth anything. So then you make decisions out of that, right? And so my first understanding of something was actually that I was still in the womb, and that I believed of myself that I was a burden. And my first projection out was, I'm sorry. And so every decision and every action from myself, from even in the womb, was from this state of, I'm sorry. Like, I've done something wrong. I've bothered you. I'm a nuisance, so I'm just going to hide away. I'm going to make myself invisible. I don't matter, and I don't want to disrupt you. So God has really rewired that for me.
Yeah, because when I hear about that side of your story,
Yeah.
I don't see that in you.
No.
At all.
No, I'm completely changed.
And I think a lot of people who know you wouldn't necessarily know.
No idea. And that's the interesting thing in my process with God. I wasn't going to church, and I felt him tell me to specifically go to the embassy, and I was fighting because I had this perception of Pentecostal people and how weird they are. And they are weird.
You're not wrong.
Way. No, in a good way. Honestly, I'm one of the weirdest weirdos now. But I mean in the sense of glorifying God and being free in my expression of worship of him. I don't limit myself. Yeah. And I know what he's done for me, and I'm so appreciative of that. And so in going to the embassy, then it became God telling me to go on the worship team. And I didn't want to do that. In the stage that I was in, I was just on my own with my 3 very young kids. I had been on my own for 6 months, and out of abuse. So we were healing, and there was a lot to maintain and manage as a mother. Mm-hmm. So for God to say to me, go on the worship team, I thought, that's ridiculous. I can't handle more. I can't give out more. I've got enough on my plate. And I remember God saying to me, I'm not asking you to do it for me. I want this for you. And that's where that started. And so that was back in 2008, 2007, 2008, 2008. And then it grew from there, where I was getting words that I was a worship leader, that I was a songwriter, all these things. And 11 years later, here we are, and that's exactly what's happened. And it's incredible, the things that God has done, how he's grown me, how he's grown my kids, and my relationship with him. I'm so thankful for all the things that he's brought me through, and how he's retrained me, and how I'm able then to use what has happened and turn it for good, and be able to release love and release compassion for people, because he cares. And I have firsthand experience of that, so I know that what I'm saying of him is true. So that for anyone else who requires that kind of compassion, that kind of love, and doesn't believe in themselves, I'm so excited to share him with them, so that their trajectory can change too.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting how, my background and your background coming together. So we got married
2015.
2015. It seems like it should be longer.
It does. Well, it seems like it's been longer, and it seems like it hasn't been nearly that long. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, my 3 girls and me
Yeah.
meet your 3 kids and you,
Yeah.
and we bump into each other on August 8th, 2015.
Well, I don't think we bumped into each other.
No,
we got married, so we knew each other before that day.
Yes, we did. Yeah, it's not like we were at Walmart and went, "Hey, this is neat."
No, but what's interesting is when you were talking about how, because you were talking about Jeff Hillier and how he believed in you.
I hadn't named him, but
I'm naming him.
We've outed him now.
Yeah, well, he deserves it. But you did the same for me, because as a new worshiper and worship leader, like, you're the one that gave me that opportunity, and you were my pastor first. This was 2010. Mm-hmm. And you were so awesome with me, because I think my first few times were bad. They were just, I wanted to do so well, and it was like, oh gosh, I can never do that again. Exactly what you're saying. You're like, no, you got to do it again.
I can't imagine anybody leading worship for the first time and walking off the stage and thinking, that was amazing. I am awesome. And honestly, there probably are people who have done that, and it probably wasn't amazing, and it probably wasn't awesome. And they probably need someone to burst their bubble. I think of like American Idol, right? And you watch these auditions, and sometimes it's Simon Cowell who is for the first time telling this person they can't sing.
Yeah.
Because nobody's been honest with them.
Yeah.
I don't really measure it when somebody's leading worship. You give them the opportunity. I think it's exactly what you said. Jeff gave me an opportunity and believed in me, and so that created in me this ability, or maybe this desire to give back in that way, and to have patience with people, and to see, you use this phrase quite a bit, is to see the person how God sees them, instead of maybe who they are at the moment.
Who they will be. Yeah.
See them who they will be.
Yeah.
Rather than who they are at the moment.
Yeah.
Because I think that's important for people. When you give them an opportunity and they step out, it's not going to be perfect. It's,
right.
Here we are creating this podcast, and I'm sure a year from now, it'll look a lot different than what it looks like right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So in moving forward, so you've been leading worship since you were 16. Mm-hmm. I've been leading worship since, for now 9 years. And so now, just in combination, we're really feeling like the Lord is asking us to step out and move beyond the 4 walls of our church, which, by the way, we love our church family. They've provided so much for both of us. I've grown so much in that place. So there's no lack of love there or anything like that. It's just, when God calls you, you go.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk about that a little bit, because I've been at the embassy. I started in 2001. It's now 2019. So it'll be, by the time I'm finished at the embassy, it'll have been 18 years, which is a long time for anything anymore. I mean, our parents' generation, my dad worked at Atomic Energy for 40 plus years. My mom worked as a nurse for 40 plus years, pretty much in the same area in Pembroke.
Yeah.
It's not as common anymore for people to be in one career or one place for a long time, and especially pastors. Like, I don't know all the exact stats anymore, but I remember throwing numbers around, like a senior or a lead pastor in a church, evangelical church. So we're not just talking Pentecostal, but like, Baptist and Pentecostal and like all the evangelical churches. The average for a lead pastor is 4 to 7 years, mm-hmm. Which is wild to think about. How do you get anything accomplished in 4 years? And for youth pastors, it's even less. It's like 18 months. And I think that's an old stat. I think it's like a year now. So, building connections with people and building community takes a long time.
Yeah.
And I honestly thought, probably up until about a year ago, I thought, man, the embassy will be where I am forever.
Yeah.
because I want to dig in and build community. And like you said, we love the people there. So this isn't a matter of being dissatisfied or not liking the
No,
people,
no.
but probably about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, really feeling God start to speak to me. And he started pointing out the life of Abraham and how he asked Abraham to go from where he was to come to the promised land. And I just want you to bring your whole family, and I want you to gather everybody up, and I just want you to follow me. And not really telling him, when you get there, here are the 10 things you're going to do. It was just a matter of, follow me. And looking into that story a little bit more, I found out that it was actually Abraham's father who was called and took his family to a place called Padam Aram. I could be butchering that name. That's okay.
I wouldn't know.
Somebody will know. Somebody
will know.
might
Somebody
email
help
us and say, hey, you said it wrong. That's okay. So took him to that place, and that where that place geographically is basically a connection between 4 or 5 different nations. And what they did was they settled. And I just, God had spoken to me early in 2004, 2005, about some things to do with worship and helping people connect with God on a more regular basis. And really this idea of our connection to God being something more than just during a church service somewhere, or like, for many people, it because of how life goes, it's like, well, I'll go at Easter, I'll go at Christmas, I'll go for special events, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's your church attendance that connects you with God.
No.
I think your connection with God is a heart-to-heart connection with him.
Yeah.
But definitely there is a community that's built when you attend church. It's like a family that's built that helps you get through and helps you worship him in a deeper way, helps you grow in your faith and grow in your relationship with him. And so there were things that he put in my heart in mid-2000, and I think I settled. Like I just thought, well, there's different things going on in my life right now with my family, and I'm just going to put those to the side for now, and I'll just focus on this. And the things that I focused on were good things.
Right, like pastoring the church.
Yeah, like pastoring and just being a servant and serving people and loving people. And I think sometimes the enemy of the best thing is a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's not always a negative thing that you get sidetracked with. So God just started speaking that to me, and we started talking probably 6 months to a year ago, and just over time, really wanting to be obedient. Like I think if there's anything I want to be said of my life, it's that I don't want to be 80 years old and look back and regret not taking those steps of faith,
right,
whatever they may be. Because even as we're recording this right now, we don't totally know like what's our next step, what's our where are we going to put our feet, and we don't want to be irresponsible. We're not advocating for people to be irresponsible and just, I'm not going to work, I'm just going to wait for God to tell me what to do.
No.
Because I think there are things that he has put in our heart that we're building. This is one of those things, and writing music is another one of those things, and working with the church. And actually what I felt him say to me was that this year I'll be working harder than I've ever worked before. So I have no problem with that. I have no problem working hard when it's following him.
Yeah.
And to be radically obedient to him is what I want. So that's where we're at in this journey right now. And talking about worship. I mean, this podcast, we're talking about us a little bit more so that people can kind of get a sense of who we are. Right. And they'll learn more. I've got so many crazy stories, fun stories, faith stories, just Matt stories.
I know some of those stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that'll be balanced off because I also know some stories about you.
No,
So-
I don't think you do.
No, I don't think I do either.
My
I think I
stories
just said that.
are God stories. They really are. Because, well, it's like you're saying, you really felt like God was placing something on your heart in the last, I would say more so the last 6 months. But definitely there's been small steps of obedience that you don't know why you're doing that thing. Why is he bugging me to do that thing?
Yeah.
And then you do it, and then all of a sudden it makes sense after you've done it. I have lived that. for I don't know how long. So for me, since 2010, I've lived by faith, because God called me to lay down everything to follow him, which is a scary thing.
Yeah.
But for 5 years, my kids and I lived a supernatural, miraculous lifestyle where he provided for us unbelievably. And then we got married, and there was a time of settling and blending the family and all that kind of stuff, which I think he honors.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, now it's time to pick it up again. And so for you, you were getting the Abraham thing, which was fantastic, because it's, I don't agree with, if I feel Holy Spirit is saying something to me, but you haven't caught it and you disagree, then I'm going to honor what you're saying in our marriage. And I'm just going to pray that, Holy Spirit, if you want that thing to happen, then you need to speak to him, because I'm not going to get in a fight with my best friend over this, because you have to have a revelation of it too.
Yeah.
And so at around the same time, I remember being frustrated with God because I was being obedient to, okay, I wrote this song and we had it produced, and you've called me to be a songwriter, and I'm supposed to write songs, and I'm trying. I'm doing my best in the moment, what I thought was my best. I won't say it actually was my best, because I would procrastinate with things because I didn't totally believe that I was a songwriter.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. But anyway, obedient in the small things, and then just hitting a pinnacle where it's the same as you say. I can't be 80 years old and recognize that I haven't done what he's asked me to do,
Right.
especially given the journey that I've been on and what he means to me. I can't live any other way,
Right.
than fully for him. So it's amazing to be partnered with someone who wants to live fully for him and listen and obey to even the weirdest thing when you don't understand why he's saying what he's saying, but you do it. That's how I want to live. So around the same time that you were, praying into some things, I was praying too. And I remember him saying, ask me for everything. Where I've seen lots of things. I've seen lots of things since 2008 of where he's taking me, what he wants to do, what he wants to build, what he wants to grow. And in all those things, here's the little step that you're taking right now. Sometimes that can be frustrating. But in that moment, more recently, he's like, ask me for all of it. And so I did. And I feel like that's for us. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's where we're going. Right? And it is to do with worship. It is to do with loving people. And making him and his love famous for people who have a smaller understanding of that, who want to grow in their understanding of that, but also people who aren't aware that he wants to know them.
Right.
It's like that Tim Ferriss thing where he asks, if you had a billboard, what would it say?
Right.
And for me, it has to be something to do with God loves you.
Yeah.
God speaks to you. Hello?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what I needed. All I needed to know was I knew he was there, but I didn't know he talked.
Yeah, it's interesting too when you understand. I mean, I love space, and I love things about space, and I love standing in the backyard and looking up. Well, maybe not as much here because there's a Petro-Canada right behind us. But like at my parents' place where I grew up in Pembroke, on a really dark night, you can see thousands and thousands and thousands of stars. You can actually see the Milky Way with your eyes.
Yeah.
And to me, to look up to that and just to see the wonder of that, and to think, there's a passage in the book of Psalm that says God holds the universe in his hand.
Yeah.
And when you understand the absolute magnitude, like the distances, we can't wrap our mind around the distances. Even in our solar system, the distances are astronomical. That's, yes, good, right? The galaxy, our local group of galaxies, like some of the distances that they talk about are, you can't wrap your head around them. You just, it's really difficult to do that. And then to understand that God has the entire universe in his hand.
Yeah.
And yet he loves to talk with us.
Yeah. And
speak with us. And I think there may be people who listen to this and think, God does not speak to me. And they're wrong. He does. He does. He actually cares about, he cares about them.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's easier to build a theology and an understanding of God based on your circumstance than it is to actually take the faith and take that step to believe that you're worth God speaking to you.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think people don't hold themselves, or they think, well, that's delusional. Why, this invisible person in the sky
Mm-hmm.
is talking to me. And it's not delusional. It's actually, it's peaceful. It's full of peace, right?
Oh, yeah.
To be able to connect with him. And I think both of us in our journeys on our own, and then now definitely together, to know that we connect with God. And I want to even more. Like tomorrow, I want to connect with him even more than I have today.
Yeah.
And the fruit of that is peace in relationship, peace in my family, peace with my kids, peace with my extended family,
Peace with yourself.
peace with yourself. Yeah, actually, that'll come up probably in an episode at some point, as being kind to yourself, because that's something that I've struggled with.
Yeah.
But yeah, just this idea of worshiping him and walking with him,
Mm-hmm.
right, is something that I would love to help people
Yeah.
uncover in their lives.
Yeah. Well, and I think we could do a full podcast on how ways he speaks to us.
Yeah.
For anybody who doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Or isn't sure.
Yeah. So there's lots of good stuff coming up.
Yeah.
I want to, maybe we'll just end with, you said one phrase this morning as we were talking about this, and the phrase was, you can worship anything.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe talk about that for a few seconds, because it'll flavor kind of where we're going with things.
Okay.
I think a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the one thing, is what is worship? Right? I mean, if we can't define it, then why are we doing it at all? And really, worship is the affection, the expression of love and affection and devotion to something or someone, right?
Yeah.
And so even in the church, we can say that we worship God, and maybe we do, but we can worship just about anything. So a lot of people worship their money. So everything is about the devotion to their money or their earnings. Worship can be a deity. Worship can be you worship your own kids. I see that a lot right now, where it's unbalanced. Parents are pouring everything they have, including to the detriment of themselves and their energy and their health, for their kids, and they become their idol.
And the kids become entitled.
Absolutely they do. Absolutely they do. And here's the thing, is even in the realm of Christianity, we have to watch, what are we actually worshiping? Because, when we're worshiping God, it really is that affection towards him, for him, and him alone. I think sometimes we can be involved in church activities that they become our worship. Even our worship sets, even the music.
We worship.
We worship songs. Yeah. And so it's like, listen, if you have to say, oh, I'm not going to connect with God until it's my jam, until it's right, the current song that's really on my heart. I love this song. It's speaking to me in the season that I'm in, or I just really love this song, or I love the words. That's great, but that's not worshiping God. That's worshiping the song.
Yeah, that's waiting until everything's perfect.
Yeah.
And this in the 80s and 90s, maybe it's still a thing, but the term is the worship wars, where you have hymns versus choruses,
Yeah.
and you have
old
that. Versus new. We have it to a degree, probably not as much as we used to, but it's, the younger generations look at the older generation and they say, well, if they could just learn some new stuff.
Right.
And the older generations look at the younger generation and say, well,
so bangy.
Yeah, it's so bangy, and we have good stuff. Why would they want anything else?
Right.
And when you understand that, I think what people are getting at is the medium, right? They're getting at the vessel, and you're concerning yourself maybe a little bit too much with the vessel instead of, that might be an indication that you're worshiping worship.
Well, yeah.
Which is not, it's not a condemning thing that I'm saying. It's just more of a realization.
Yeah.
Of, man, if we just really brought what we had. I know a number of people at the embassy who I can tell, from week to week, we wouldn't be maybe doing the songs that they would love, that are in their car on their 8-track player maybe. Listening to on a weekly basis, but what they're there for is to worship corporately.
Yeah.
And they give their all to it, and their hearts are open. And I want to be like that when I'm their age. Like some of the people I'm thinking about are older.
Well, you said 8-track.
Yeah.
Although it could be hipsters.
It could be hipsters.
Yeah. We love hipsters. No, but that's the thing, right? It's like if I'm what am I connecting with when I'm worshiping? What am I worshiping? And if it's truly God and I'm really connecting with him, music can be the vehicle that helps me get there. But the reality is I should be able to worship him in silence.
Yeah.
I should be able to worship him anywhere I am and with anything I do, right? And so like you were talking about how we can use our life as a means of worship.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. We can worship in a lot of ways. The point of it being worship has to do with intention.
Yeah.
I think, right? So we can have integrity and we can have character, and absolutely we conduct ourselves in a way that's pleasing and honoring to God. Why? Because we love him and for no other reason.
Right.
Not because of what we get out of it. He's a good father, so he will give things, but that shouldn't be our motive, because then we're worshiping the reward that we get from him when we're obedient to him. That's not the point. Love him for the sake of loving him.
Yeah.
That's to me what worship is.
Yeah.
Period.
That's good.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
But the point is, we're dealing, for the most part, we're talking about expression of worship through music is kind of our genre.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is good. I think I'm excited for the conversations we're going to have, and I'm looking forward to connecting with people who are listening to this, because I think that this isn't just a conversation that you and I are having. Like, this is a conversation that is, it's just ramping up all over the world. Like that connection with God.
Yeah.
In the world, they're talking about spirituality.
Yeah.
In the church, we're talking about really being connected with God and encountering his presence.
Right.
And it's, you look through the Bible, any miraculous thing that happens, it's because there's an encounter with God.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's what I'm about. That's my jam. That's what I want.
Yeah. And manifesting his presence through our lives so that we affect change on the earth.
Yeah.
For him.
Well, that's the episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to our dog Juno for being quiet, for our neighbors for being quiet, for everybody around us for being quiet, and a special thanks to you. We love you guys. Thanks for listening. If you want to follow us and stay up to speed on all of the amazing things that we're doing, you can go to mattandjen.ca. You can sign up for the newsletter there, or you can go to Facebook and follow us at facebook.com/mattandjenmusic. Or you can see all of our pretty pictures on Instagram at mattandjenmusic. Don't forget to check in next week, guys. Until then, stay cool, or I don't know what to say here. We'll figure it out. Next week will be something different. I don't know. Anyways, awesome, guys. See you next week.